Okay, the following is a videotape deposition of Keith Waszak, taken a matter of the estate of Joann Matouk Romain, being the city of Grosse Pointe Farms. This case to be held in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Michigan, Southern Division, for the Honorable Linda Parker. Case number is 14 CV 12289. Today's date is October 2nd, 2015. The time is 10:17. We are located at 20025 Mac Plaza Drive, Grosse Pointe Woods, Michigan. And I'll have counsel introduce yourselves, please.
Solomon Radner, appearing today on behalf of the plaintiff.
Gus Morris on behalf of City of Grosse Pointe Woods, Andrew Kazahowski, John Kasanke, John Ross, Keith Waszak, and Anthony Shalhoub.
May it please the court, George DeGroot on behalf of the City of Grosse Pointe Farms, Daniel Jensen, Holly Krismanich, Jack Patterson, Andrew Rogers, Richard Rosati, Michael McCarthy, Keith Colombo, Antonio Trupiano, Jeffrey McQueen, Wesley Kipke, John Wacko, Frank Zielinski, and Mr. Ricky Good.
And my name is Mark Pizer, and I'm appearing on behalf of Timothy Matouk.
Officer, if you raise your right hand, please. You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning, officer. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Keith Waszak, Keithwas is the AK.
I see you're wearing a uniform that says Grosse Pointe Woods Police and Fire Public Safety. Is that where you're employed?
Correct.
How long have you been employed there, please?
Since 1999.
Did you have any police or public safety job prior to that in a different city?
Yes.
Where was that?
Northfield Township
And when were you employed there?
in 1998.
1998?
98.
98.
Yes.
Prior to that, did you receive any sort of training?
Yes.
You become a police officer. What training?
The Police Academy.
Where did you complete the police academy and when?
Macomb Police Academy in 1998.
And then you immediately went to work for Northfield.
Correct.
And then you were only there for a year, and then you moved over here.
Correct.
And this is where you're still employed.
Yes.
Since 1999, have you received any promotions?
Yes.
What were you hired in as 1999?
As a public safety officer.
And when is it that you got promoted and to what?
I was, it's not a promotion as in a pay grade, however, I was a field training officer, and then I was a detective, and while in the detective bureau, I was promoted to sergeant, and from sergeant, now lieutenant.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Let me go through that again. So you were a public safety officer in 1999.
Correct.
What year were you promoted?
Sergeant was in 2010,
And then after that,
lieutenant, which was last year.
2014?
Make sure to keep your voice up.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
You said at one point you were a field training officer?
Correct.
When were you a field training officer?
The exact years I do not recall.
Can you give me a ballpark?
I would say probably in 2003. I was utilized 2003, 2004, I believe, 2005. It was dependent when we had new hires.
So you would be one of the officers who was responsible for training new officers?
Correct.
And you only did that for, you said 03, 04, 05, around that area?
Yeah, precise dates I do not know.
Okay. What did that training consist of?
Training public safety officers upon hiring.
Did you review any policies, procedures, or manuals with them?
Correct.
What did you, of the things that I just mentioned, policies, procedures, or a manual, what is it that was part of the training?
All of them.
Written?
Yes.
So there's a handbook somewhere that's written with policies and procedures?
Correct.
Do you know what that book or notebook or whatever it might be, do you know what that publication is called?
The rules and regulations.
It's called Rules and Regulations?
Correct.
Do you know how often the rules and regulations is updated, if at all?
The policies are reviewed, and if they need to be changed, they're changed by the director who approves them.
So these rules and regulations are written by the director?
Correct. Well, They're approved by the director. I don't know who actually, in response to writing them, I do not know who writes them.
Is this a book that's available to the public or only to the Grosse Pointe Woods Police Department or perhaps to other police departments as well?
Only Grosse Pointe Woods Police Department, and I believe at times of request they can, for implementing their own policies and rules and regs, and that departments can obtain them.
Do you recall off the top of your head what rules and regulations, or let me ask it this way. Are there chapters in this book?
Chapters, no.
How is this book broken down?
Depending on the topic.
What topics? If you can recall, just throw some out there.
Pursuit driving, prisoner property,
Anything there about missing persons?
yes.
Anything there about preserving the scene of a missing person?
Not that I recall, no.
What do you recall, if anything, about missing persons?
Missing persons of when they have to be entered into our department policies, when they need to be entered into a lien.
Anything in there about the use of police dogs?
No.
Can we go off the record for a second?
Yes, the time is 10:23. We're now off the record. Okay, the time is 10:23:28. We're now back on the record.
All right, now that we've dealt with that noisy coffee pot, we can continue. When were you promoted in 2010 to sergeant? Do you recall the date or the time of year, the month?
Not exactly, no. I believe it was in spring, April.
Okay. So it was definitely
Or
after.
no, I take that back. It was, I believe in December. December, yes.
Oh, so at the very
For
end.
sergeant, yes.
At the very end of 2010, not December 2009.
No.
Okay. But since graduating from the police academy in 1998, have you received any further training?
Yes.
How often would you complete any training?
There's in-house training and outside training, hundreds and hundreds of hours.
So over the years, you've done hundreds and hundreds of hours of both in-house and, I'm not going to say out-house, but outsourced training.
Yes.
And what do these trainings consist of? Is it classroom work? Is it field training?
Both.
Okay. Did you ever receive any training at all about using police dogs in any investigation in any way?
Recently, yes.
Not before 2010?
In regards to training, like classroom training, was in the academy. There was a brief in the police academy. I think they brought the dog in and they discussed the dog. And in my Northfield Township, they had a canine unit there.
And did this training include when to request the assistance of a canine unit?
No.
Did the training include what police dogs are capable of doing?
Yes, from what I remember, yes.
Do you recall whether or not police dogs are capable of tracking a human being?
Tracking a human being, no. In regards to sense, yes.
The scent of a human being?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know whether or not police dogs can be used to help police find a missing person?
Are you asking, can they?
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is something that you learned at the police academy or over the course of trainings or as a police officer? How is it that you came upon this knowledge? Or is it just common sense?
Throughout the years, just talking to canine officers, seeing what's on the news through the police academy.
Okay. I want to take your attention to an incident that brings us all to court today. January 12, 2010. Somebody went missing from a church on that day. You're aware of that?
Yes.
What did you prepare? What did you review today to prepare for your testimony, if anything?
Just briefly went through the reports. I couldn't read all of them.
The Grosse Pointe Woods public safety reports, beginning with case number 1, whole bunch of zeros, 37.
Yes, 3-7, correct.
Specifically, did you review the reports that have your name on them?
Briefly, right before we came in here.
Did you review any other ones?
No.
Okay.
Well, what's ever in this packet, I mean, I perused it. I don't know exactly everything that's in here.
What's the number of the decimal point? 37 point what? At the top
One.
left? Point 1? Okay. This is the one that's, the subject is C3314, missing persons,
Correct.
and entered on 1/13/2010 at 6:09:53 seconds p.m.
Correct.
Entered by Kevin Bonk, verified by John Kazenk.
Kosanki, correct.
I was going to ask you how badly I pronounced that name. Now, do you find it odd? Strike that. When is it that you became aware that this investigation landed on the plate of Grosse Pointe Woods?
The exact date, I do not know. I believe it was a day after, 2 days after the incident.
Would it have been the date of your first entry into this police report?
I have to look at the date.
Which I believe was .10, entered January 18, 2010 at 9:46 and 57 seconds a.m.
.10. Okay, hold on a second. Thought there was one before that.
Was there one before that?
And I'm reading a report from Detective, I take it back, PSO Bonk at the time. That was when we moved from Lean and given to Grosse Pointe, that we were to enter it. That's the report I'm referring to.
And what date was that, please, if you know?
The 14th.
And that's when it was removed from lien. All right, let's move on. Did you find it odd at all that the case was being transferred to Grosse Pointe Woods so after just a day or two?
No.
Okay, so you would say that this was normal police protocol for it to be transferred to Grosse Pointe Woods at this time,
Objection, form foundation.
if you know?
I'm confused. You said objection? Or?
You can answer unless I tell you not to.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So what was the second part of the question?
It was normal police protocol, as far as you know, for this case to be transferred in the time frame that it was transferred from Grosse Pointe Farms to Grosse Pointe Woods.
I had no other experience of such, but I don't know if that answers your question.
Did you review any of the Grosse Pointe Farms police reports?
Yes.
Did anything strike you as being odd about the investigation that they conducted?
No.
Did you find it odd that they didn't call for the assistance of a canine unit?
No.
Did you find it odd that they concluded that this missing person most likely entered the water?
No.
Did you feel that it was speculation and/or assumption for them to conclude that she entered the water?
No.
When is it that you became involved with this case?
Looking at the reports, I'd have to go off the date of the report. One second here. Just want to make sure I give you the right date. First case report I see is on the 18th.
And that's got your name on it, entered 9:46 a.m., correct?
Correct.
And that's the one that's .10, correct?
Correct.
And in this one, you wrote something about having telephonic contact with somebody by the name of Fisher.
Correct.
Now, were you investigating this as a suicide, a missing person, an abduction, or something else?
It wasn't narrowed to one particular one, like as you specified here. All options were open.
Did you believe that she had committed suicide?
Not at that point,
Why not?
because I didn't have any evidence in front of me. It was an open investigation.
What about the
Anything's possible.
What about the footprints that supposedly went to the water and didn't come back? Were you aware that there were such footprints?
In the report, reported from the farm that there were footprints, correct?
That didn't convince you that she had entered the water and did not return?
If she entered the water, it doesn't mean that she did it intently. Perhaps she could have slipped, I don't know.
Okay. And you're aware that there were some number of divers that entered the water at different times, right?
Correct.
Do you believe that the divers would have found her body if she was indeed dead in the water?
Objection, foundation. You can answer.
If you know.
I can't answer that, I'm not a diver.
Okay. Do you know whether or not the Grosse Pointe Woods Public Safety Department, let me ask it this way. Do you know whether or not divers went into the water after the case had been transferred to Grosse Pointe Woods?
No, I do not.
Did you believe that there might be some criminal activity involved with this missing person?
I'm sorry, restate the question.
Did you believe that there was criminal activity that was possibly involved with this missing person?
All options were open.
Did you believe that there was... Do you believe that there was a suspicious nature about this incident?
Suspicious as in...
Well, do you believe that there was anything suspicious about Joann Matouk Romain's disappearance?
Well, I had a missing person, which is suspicious, so I would say yes.
Because again, you already were not comfortable concluding that she killed herself by walking into the water, right?
Objection, form of the question. Relevancy, his comfort level is not an issue in this case.
I'll rephrase the question. You did not believe that she had entered the water, and therefore you believed that there might be some suspicious activity. Is that true?
Form of the question is compound. You can answer.
You can explain your answer.
From what you're explaining, I think that's not true. She could be in the water, she could not be in the water. I don't know where she was.
She could have been abducted, right?
All options.
Do you recall signing an affidavit and search warrant on January 21, 2010?
I'd have to look to see. I possibly did. I'd have to see what it was for.
Please, go.
What was the date?
January 21, 2010, in the municipal court, city of Grosse Pointe Woods, Michigan.
Is there a reference number on the report that you're looking for?
I don't think this is on a report. I don't have it on a report.
You said on the 21st?
January 21, yeah.
There were 3 search warrants completed and signed and faxed to Comerica Bank, Chase Bank, and Verizon Wireless.
Signed by you?
If I was completing them, yes.
Lieutenant, could I ask you again to keep your voice up?
Yes, sorry.
Trailing off. Down
Sorry.
this way. Thank you.
Yes.
Going to have a document here. Is this an affidavit that you signed?
Yes.
And in it you wrote that the timing of the vehicle being found, you wrote was 9:30. Did you?
Okay.
Do you know why you would write 9:30 p.m.?
I would have, I think I would have referenced it from a report on a time.
I want you to assume for a moment that the Grosse Pointe Farms Police Department claims that they discovered this vehicle and thought that it was suspicious at 9:53 p.m. for the first time. Would this mean that you made a mistake when you wrote 9:30?
Objection. Misstates the facts and evidence in the case.
Well, I don't think it does.
Wasn't there a lien check at, what am I missing? Wasn't there a lien check at 9 o'clock?
Yeah, that they
Well,
ignored.
then your question doesn't make sense because that's not the facts of the case.
The testimony of the Grosse Pointe Farms Police Department was that they completely ignored that lien check and didn't think that it was suspicious until 9:53 p.m. Almost an hour later.
I would dispute that comment. If you run a lien check on the vehicle, it doesn't mean you completely ignored it.
Okay. We can address this when we have the record in front of us. I want you to assume for a moment, please, that Grosse Pointe Farms Police Department did not view this vehicle as suspicious until 9:53 or 9:55 p.m. If that is true, would this simply have been a mistake on your part when you wrote that the vehicle was found at 9:30?
I don't know if I understand the question. Can you repeat it?
I want you to assume for a moment that the Grosse Pointe Farms Police Department did not initiate an investigation in this suspicious vehicle until after 9:53 p.m.
Okay.
Assuming that fact, when you wrote in your affidavit that the vehicle was found at 9:30 p.m., was that a mistake? Was that just an estimate? What was that? Was that based on something else?
As stated previously, I don't know if it was a mistake. I'd have to look at the reports. I would get dates and times off of reports, and I don't have the Grosse Pointe Farms report in front of me.
Would you have gotten it from the written Grosse Pointe Farms reports, or would you have gotten it by calling somebody at Grosse Pointe Farms and asking?
I would say the report itself.
Okay, can I have that back, please? Do you know whether or not, did Grosse Pointe Farms tell you whether or not they believe this was a suicide or perhaps something more suspicious.
Did they state it was a suicide?
Did anybody at Grosse Pointe Farms tell you that that's what they believed?
No, they didn't say that it was a suicide, no.
What did they say, if anything?
Just the facts that footprints led up to the lake. They couldn't locate her, and they had dive teams out.
Do you recall after the case was transferred to Grosse Pointe Woods, what was your job with regards to this case?
My job was to interview individuals and see if we could find anything, basically to locate Joann Matouk. Whereabouts.
So you interviewed on January 18th, 2010. We could just go through your reports now. That's the one that's numbered .10. January 18, 2010. You indicate that you spoke to a Fisher and a Brown.
Okay.
And Ms. Brown had told you, are these conversations that you had with these two people, or were you writing what somebody else told you these people
No,
said?
it's what someone told me.
So you spoke to Brown and Fisher on the telephone?
Yes.
And then did you write this report the same day or immediately soon after talking to them?
Yes. It would have to be right after.
Okay, and you indicated in your report that there was not an alarm that was heard. This is according to Ms. Brown. Or at least that Ms. Fisher told you that Ms. Brown told her that it was not an alarm that was heard, but just two audible chirps, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was that a...
From what I'm reading,
Oh, okay.
if that's what the report says, yes.
I was just reading the last 2 or 3 lines of the first paragraph.
She was asked if she had a car alarm, at which time she stated no, and that it was her friend Brown that heard the alarm. Correct, that it was not a panic alarm or broken into as an audible alarm, similar to what is heard when an alarm is activated. 2 audible chirps were heard.
Like when you're locking or unlocking your car, right?
Correct.
Okay, you then spoke to a Miss Nowak, right?
Yes.
And she told you that she was driving on Lake Shore northbound, and she saw a person wearing clothing that looked to be all black in color, right? I just started the second paragraph.
Okay. Wearing clothing that looked to be all black in color, correct?
And that this person was standing on the lake side of the road and not moving. She told you that?
Person was standing on the lakeside, not moving, correct?
And she told you that she thought that this was odd, because why would somebody be dressed in all black standing near the road, right?
That's what the report states, yes.
Did you agree with her that this was perhaps odd?
I don't know what the conversation was. I don't know what I had told her.
I'm asking you. Does this report refresh your recollection, or do you perhaps recall as to whether or not you thought to yourself, wow, that is odd. Maybe I should look into that.
No.
Okay. Later that day, you spoke to David Romain, correct?
Which report are you on?
Point 11.
All right, this goes from 10 to 12. I don't have 11 with me.
I I may have an extra copy. I can hand you the first 3 pages of point 11.
Okay.
Later on January 18, 2010, at 3:40 p.m., you entered that you and Sergeant Kazakowski interviewed David Romain at his residence. True?
Correct.
Why is it that you interviewed David Romain? What's
Because
that you
he
there?
was husband of Joann Romain.
Was there anybody in particular who told you, hey, you may want to go interview David Romain? Or was this just something that you or Sergeant Kazakowski decided on your own, given the fact that he was the husband, as you said?
I believe speaking with family, we found out David Romain was the husband, and being that he's a husband, perhaps he had information, so we go talk to him.
And he told you all about this court proceedings that were going on downtown that day, or on the night that she disappeared, right?
Yes, that's what they reported.
Did anybody ever tell you, let me rephrase that, did anybody in Joann Matouk Romain's family ever tell you who they believe might be a suspect?
Yes.
And which names were given to you by whom, please?
It was all the contact that pretty much had was with Michelle.
The lady sitting to my right?
Yes.
Okay, and whom did she identify as a possible suspect in wanting Joann Matouk Romain to disappear?
At first it was, I believe it's written somewhere in the report that she believes it was either to look into, she never named them out specific, but she said you need to look into her dad, David, then John, and then Tim.
Did you
and then
indeed?
Bill. I believe it was those 4.
So David, John, Bill, and Tim.
Correct.
Did you indeed interview any of them?
Yes.
Whom did you interview, please?
I interviewed David and John.
Not Bill.
No.
Do you know if anybody interviewed Bill?
Not that I know of.
Did you try to interview Bill?
No, I did not.
Did you try to interview Tim?
No, I did not.
Did you ever discuss this case with Tim?
No, I did not.
Did you ever discuss this case with Bill?
No, I did not.
When you spoke to John and David, was it because Michelle suggested that they might be suspects?
They either suspects that she believes, or they may have information to lead me in the direction of locator.
So she gave you 4 names and you only contacted 2 of the names that she gave you, is that
Correct.
Do you know if anybody else from your department reached out to either Bill or Tim?
Yes.
Who?
And that would be Detective Sergeant Pathology.
Whom did he contact? Was it Bill, Tim, or both?
Both, I believe.
So he actually spoke to Bill and Tim about Joann's disappearance.
To what detail was spoken, I do not know.
That's not asking about detail, but Pazakowski discussed with Bill and with Tim in some way something about the disappearance of Joann,
If you know.
if you know.
I would say yes.
Okay. Now, at some point you found out that, did anybody from Grosse Pointe Farms tell you that Joann suffered from anxiety, depression, mental illness, anything like that?
No.
Did anybody tell you that she was paranoid?
Yes. Well, I don't know the exact word, paranoid, but...
It was in their reports.
I'm sorry?
It was in their reports, the Grosse Pointe Farm reports.
That I don't recall.
Do you recall what specific facts Joann was quoted as saying that caused people to believe she was paranoid?
things that she was saying.
I'll jump right to it. Did anybody advise you or at any point that Joann believed she was being followed
Yes,
and that something was happening at her bank account
correct.
and something with her P.O. box?
Yes.
And were these things, did you believe these things to just be paranoia, or did you actually look into them?
I looked into them.
Okay. And there actually was somebody listed on her P.O. box who didn't belong there, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so that wouldn't be paranoia, that would be a pretty good sixth sense, wouldn't it?
Objective form, foundation.
I'll take an answer.
So repeat the question.
If you believe somebody's following you and it turns out somebody is following you, that's not really paranoia, is it?
Same objection, lack of foundation.
If you think someone's following you, you can confirm that they're following you, then no, that's not paranoia.
Okay, so if things start to happen and you believe that somebody's following you, and one of those things that's leading you to believe that is that your P.O. box has names on it that don't belong there, and that fact is not verified, then what's your belief? Would that be paranoia, or would that be justified fear? Or would it be something else? Or do you not want to opine?
Well, I can only speak for myself, whether it be fear or it wouldn't be fear or paranoia. I would look into it.
Okay.
Why someone's on my account.
If somebody is afraid that they're being followed and acting paranoid, and then that person disappears, and the circumstances are suspicious, is that something that you would typically investigate as a suicide, abduction, murder, or something else?
As stated previously, if we have someone that isn't there, or is missing, I should say, all avenues are open. Anything's a possibility.
You didn't find it odd that Grosse Pointe Farms almost immediately wrote this off as a suicide?
Objective form and foundation.
John, same.
I don't know if I'm stating it was a suicide from the very beginning.
There's testimony from Defendant McCarthy, formerly the Grosse Pointe Farms Public Safety Department, essentially that he concluded, certainly within 24 hours, that the most likely thing that happened to Joann is that she walked into the lake and didn't return. Do you agree with that conclusion?
Could I have that read back, please?
So you're stating that he said within 24 hours that she walked into the lake. And then the question to me is,
Do you agree with that, with his conclusion? That that's the most likely thing that happened to her?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
So you don't agree with that as a conclusion, do you? Because you're not sure what happened.
I'm not sure if she walked in, if she slipped, fell in. I don't
Or
know.
if she was in it all, right?
At the time?
Yes.
Yeah, at the time, no. Because I didn't know if she was in the water. That's why we're investigating it.
Okay. And you didn't find it odd that no assistance, no canine assistance was requested on the evening that she disappeared?
Objection has been answered.
No, I do not find that.
Wouldn't a canine be able to help you find a person if the person is missing?
Objection foundation. You can
Do
answer.
you know?
Join.
John.
Are they help to find missing people? Is that what you asked?
Yes.
Depending on the situation, correct?
Okay, well, let me ask you this. And if you don't know, you can just say you don't know. If a person walks from their car to the water and a dog is able to pick up that person's scent, wouldn't the dog, assuming it's a good, competent police dog, take you to the water and then basically lose the scent there? If you know.
Objection Foundation. You can answer if you know.
No, I do not know.
Can I have my documents back, please? Let's move on to point 12. Did you ever talk to Mary Louise Angela Orsini?
I'd have to look at the reports.
Well, in point 12, it says that it was entered by Dennis Walker, and the reporting officer was Kevin Bonk. Would you have anything to do with her if their names are the ones on the report?
If it says those two names on it, no.
Okay. Let's skip to point 14, if you have it, please. And this is a report that was authored by you, correct?
Yes, my name's on it.
January 21, 2010 at 12:52 p.m.?
Correct.
And it begins on 1/20/10. Mary Louise Orsini was contacted by telephone. Was she contacted by you?
If it says contact by telephone, yes, and if I'm doing a report, correct.
And you were asking her to clarify her written statement, true?
Yes.
Is this the written statement?
Written statement. Yes, it has her name on it.
And it's dated January 19th, 2010?
Correct.
It's got her address, the city, the zip code, her phone number,
Correct.
her cell phone number, date of birth, and age.
Correct.
It was taken by an officer by the name of Walker.
Yes.
Do you know what Walker's first name is?
Scott.
Not Dennis Walker?
Oh, yeah, his legal name, yes. I'm sorry. It is Dennis. Yeah.
Is this the Walker that's referenced on 37.12, if you know? That's taking her statement on January 19th?
Yeah, it would have to be. We only have one Walker in the department.
Okay, let's take a look at her statement. I attended Eucharistic adoration from 5:30 p.m. or so on Tuesday, January 12, 2010. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
At 7 p.m., F.R. John performed, well, I guess that would mean Father John,
Correct.
performed benediction, and afterward, the greatest majority of people left. Did I read that bullet point correctly?
Correct.
Third bullet point is all who remained were Ralph and Elizabeth, a nice-looking couple, and myself. Did I read that correctly?
Correct.
Next bullet point, about 7:20 p.m., Father John went to the Lakeshore Road front of the church to lock the doors. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Perhaps 10 to 15 minutes later, when Ralph got up to put on his coat, I became leery to stay behind alone. So I got up to leave. Did I read that correctly?
Correct.
At the end of that line, the very last line, it says over. What does over mean?
Over, there's probably more written on the back, I would think.
Is that typically what that means when there's more written on the back?
I'm making an assumption here, yes.
Can you please take a look at your packet that you have in front of you and see if the over is anywhere included in your packet?
No, I
You
don't
can take a
have,
moment to look through it.
I don't have the attachments.
Was there anything that we've reviewed so far on the statement that you don't understand?
No.
Okay, so when you say that you were calling her to clarify her written statement and to possibly obtain any further information, would it be fair to say that the main reason you were calling was to possibly obtain further information, but not necessarily to clarify what she had written?
No, it's for both.
Okay. What specifically in her statement needed clarification, please?
It's practice to contact someone if they wrote something down, see if there's any more information that they forgot to add or anything changed that could assist with the investigation.
And you reviewed her entire statement before you called her?
I would say I'd have to, yeah.
Okay. She then confirmed that there were no other vehicles even parked on the drive that leads to and from Lake Shore, correct?
According to her, yes.
When she left, her vehicle was the only one parked on the drive, correct?
The only one parked, yes. The only one parked on the drive, yeah, correct.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes, that's what it says in the report.
What were you just saying about one park?
When she left, her vehicle was the only one parked on the drive.
Right. Did she say whether or not she left in her vehicle, or did you just assume that? She didn't walk away and leave her vehicle there, did she?
Miss Mary Louise?
Right.
Yeah, if her vehicle was the only one there, she was leaving.
Okay. And this was, do you know what time this was?
It was after Mass.
About 10 to 15 minutes after 7:20?
I can't make that assumption.
Well, in her statement it says that at 7:20 Father John went to the lake shore, etc., and then perhaps 10 to 15 minutes later.
Correct.
Right, so...
Okay.
And you do know that this investigation got started because a vehicle was found there in the same parking lot that Miss Mary Louise Angela Orsini said was empty of vehicles a couple hours before, correct?
Correct.
That strike you as odd or suspicious?
No.
Well, okay. It speaks for itself. Can you skip to point 16, please? Can you mark that, please? I'm having her written statement marked as an exhibit. Point 16 is your report, correct?
Correct.
January 21, 2010 at 3:09 p.m.
Correct.
And you made contact with Cecil Harity.
Yes.
She stated she does not know Joann Romain and that she does not recall seeing her in the church, right?
Correct.
She stated that she recalls that Ralph and Elizabeth Fisher were the last to leave the church with her and the Fishers parked in the parking lot, right?
Correct.
She stated that she parks in the drive that goes out to Lakeshore, right?
Correct.
She says that she left around 7:25 p.m. and when driving to leave, all she can recall is that she saw a black and color van, something a family would drive, parked in the same driveway, right?
That's what it states, yes.
Now, you had already been informed that there were some family members who believed that this was an abduction and not a suicide, correct?
It's a family that was stated to me.
Yes?
Yes.
And if there's a black van there, if there's a black van being seen there, that's something that should be followed up with, right?
Object to the form of the question.
Is that something that...
How would you follow up on a black van somewhere?
Is that...
You don't know.
Okay, would that be...
Plate number or anything, so.
Would that be something that you would find of value in your investigation?
It would be kept in the report as known information, so continuing on in the investigation, if anything came back to this van, then yes.
Did this black van being seen there help you reach any sort of conclusions about what possibly could have happened to Joann on that evening?
Conclusions, no.
Possibilities?
No.
Did you ask her, when she told you that, did you ask her if it's possible that this black and color van was really just the Lexus that was seen later that evening?
I can't remember the conversation. I don't know if I can't recall.
Well, thinking back, if there's a car that's found there, a Lexus, and one of the possibilities is that Joann parked that Lexus there and then walked into the water and died. Isn't this something that you would want to ask this witness? Are you sure it was a black van, or wasn't it? Isn't it possible that it was just this Lexus?
Well, her statement was that if something a family would drive, black and color van, something a family would drive, would state it would be big.
So not the Lexus, right?
No.
And then on January 22nd, I'm now on report point 18.
I have that one either. Those are 17 and 19.
You don't have point 18 there?
Let me check. Yes.
You got it?
Yes.
January 22, 2010 at 12:05 p.m. All
Correct.
right, and this is your report?
Yes.
I don't know what number paragraph to call it, but midway through your narrative, on 1/22/10, Ralph and Elizabeth Fisher were contacted by phone. Do you see that?
Yes.
Are you the one who contacted them?
Yes.
Elizabeth reports to have seen a woman that matched the description of Joann in the church during service. Right? You wrote that?
Yes.
She told you that?
Yes, that's what I wrote down.
And Ralph stated that their vehicle was parked in the parking lot when they exited the church. There were no other vehicles in the lot near the church. You wrote that?
Yes.
Is that what they told you?
Yes. That's
But
what
there were vehicles that were parked at the other end of the lot, near the church office, right?
Yes.
And that's what they told you?
Yes.
So again, we've got another witness saying that this vehicle that was later found by the Grosse Pointe Farms Police Department, first at 8:58 and then at 9:53, was not there, at least after church services, right?
Correct.
Did the fact that this Lexus was not in the parking lot, according to a number of witnesses, and then was in the parking lot later that evening, did that particular fact or that evidence make you think one way or another about whether or not this was an abduction, suicide, something suspicious?
No.
Skip to point 21, please, if you have it. David Romain
Yes.
provided you with telephone records?
I'm sorry?
David Romain provided you with some telephone records
Correct.
and agreed to take a polygraph?
Correct.
Do you know what was going to be discussed in the polygraph?
If she knew the whereabouts of Joann Romain.
Is that was the purpose of the polygraph to clear him as a suspect?
There was concerns from Michelle Romain of the involvement of her father. So yeah, the answer I would say yes.
Ultimately, did he take a polygraph and pass?
He did take a polygraph, yes.
And
I don't know the wordage that the MSP uses. However, it wasn't a failure. It was.
The
I don't
subject
know the
is-
wordage of how
This-
they.
the subject is being truthful regarding this issue? Does that sound right?
Say that again.
The subject is being truthful regarding this issue. Does that sound right?
Well, if you got a report, counsel, why don't you show it to him? You're asking him to speak from recollection. It's apparent throughout this deposition, there's times you can't without looking at records, so
Okay.
I would suggest if you got something that suggests what you're saying, show it to him.
Do you recall conducting this polygraph? I'm sorry,
I didn't.
was the polygraph conducted?
Yes.
And was there some sort of report handed to you?
No. No.
You never got the report?
MSP stated, which is in one of the reports, that they would be forwarding the report. Everything was verbal we were present during the polygraph, and it was verbal.
Did you ever see the report?
That I know, I think both or one was sent, and I'd have to, I can't recall whether reviewing them or not.
Both or one was sent?
Yes.
You're not sure if you received both John's and David's?
That I don't know which one.
Did they tell you over the phone if either of the people who took the test appeared to be lying?
No, at the time of the test, the polygraph, Joann Matouk had passed, and David Romain Matouk did not pass, but according to MSP, there could be other lying factors for not passing.
But you don't recall ever seeing the report from the David Romain?
I'd have to look at the attachment. No, I don't recall.
And just for the record, in response to Mr. Piser's, I guess, objection, I wasn't looking at a report of the polygraph of David. I was looking at the polygraph report of Joann Matouk and asking if that's the same language that was in. For the record, I do not have the polygraph report from David Romain.
Aha! Sleight of hand.
There was nothing sleight of hand about it. So you recall that they told you that David Romain's was inconclusive and that John appeared to be being truthful. Is that fair to say?
From what I recall, yes.
Did you review that particular fact prior to testifying today?
No.
So you actually remember that from 2010?
That part I do, yes.
Is there a reason that that part sticks out in your head?
Typically, polygraphs aren't given. It was something you don't do all the time, so I believe that's perhaps why I remember.
When are polygraphs used?
When?
Yeah.
To see if there's any involvement of a particular subject you want to talk to.
You do know that polygraph results are not admissible in court, usually, right?
Correct, it's just a tool to use.
To help you decide whether or not you want to continue investigating somebody? Or
Not to decide, it's not a deciding factor.
to help the police with their investigation as to whether or not they should continue investigating a specific suspect, right?
No, you can't use one specific tool to make that decision.
Well, I'm not asking if that's the one specific tool that you're going to use, but it's something that would be used to help you decide whom to investigate, correct?
You could use it as a tool, yes.
For example, if you have a suspect and they pass the polygraph, that would probably help you decide whether or not to continue investigating that person or perhaps to move on to somebody else. Fair?
Not necessarily, to an extent perhaps.
Okay, to an extent. And you said in this case there were 4 people that were listed, that were told to you as possible suspects, correct?
Correct.
There was David Romain, there was John Matouk, there was Bill Matouk, and there was Tim Matouk, right?
Correct.
And only 2 of those 4 agreed to take a polygraph, right?
Correct.
Do you know whether or not you or anybody else in the department asked either Tim or Bill to take a polygraph?
No, I do not.
Are you the one who asked David and John to take the polygraph, or was that somebody else?
I don't recall it. An assumption would be me. You know, can I backtrack for a second?
Sure, please.
In regards to, I don't know how the question was asked. However, in regards to Bill and Tim, I don't know if, I know I did not ask, but I believe, I think MSP, or they were inquired through MSP or the prosecutors. Someone had asked them if they would volunteer for one.
For polygraph?
Correct.
And what did they say?
That I don't recall. Again, I wasn't the one that, due to Tim and Bill were asked, I believe, from MSP.
MSP was the
And again, this is, I believe, this is through, just thinking out of the top of my head.
Who would you have heard this from?
It was from Detective Sergeant Pathology at the time.
So Pazakowski is the one who, is it Pazakowski or Howski?
Pathology.
Pazakowski, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to mispronounce your name over and over and over and over again. Okay, so Pazakowski is the one who spoke to MSP about doing a polygraph for Bill and Tim.
I can't answer for him, but I believe it was MSP.
Okay. But he would have been the one talking to MSP, not you, right?
Correct.
Okay. Did you review all the Grosse Pointe Farms reports that were shared with your department?
The ones that were given to us, yes. I believe they're all of them.
Was there any part of it that made you question why they did what they did at any point?
No.
Do you know whether or not any Grosse Pointe Woods public safety officer was dispatched to the home of Michelle Romain on January 12, 2010?
Do I have knowledge of that? No, I do not.
Do you know if somebody were to be dispatched, you know whether or not there would be some sort of dispatch record or some other record?
No, not necessarily.
When officers are dispatched to people's homes in response to a missing person, is that something that dispatch would notate somewhere, if you know?
Not necessarily, no. If it's our case at the time, then yes.
If the Grosse Pointe Woods Department is contacted by a different department and asked to assist in some way, is that something that would be notated somewhere in the Grosse Pointe Woods?
It's dependent on what the assistance is.
So, speaking about this case in particular, if Grosse Pointe Farms would have contacted Grosse Pointe Woods on the evening of January 12, 2010, and requested that Grosse Pointe Woods send an officer over to the home of Michelle Romain to inquire or advise as to her mother's disappearance, is that something that Grosse Pointe Woods would notate somewhere, if you know?
Not necessarily, no. If we're just doing a service for them, going to someone's house to make notification for them, their department, not necessarily, no.
Okay, now after these two polygraphs were done, the polygraph of Joann Matouk and David Romain were completed, did you or anybody in your department continue investigating either of them as possible suspects?
I don't recall. I don't, depending on how the reports are, we took the information which we had and continued on.
Do you know whether or not your department, well, were you ever notified by MSP of whether or not Bill Matouk or Tim Matouk took a polygraph?
Was I notified? No.
Do you know whether or not they did?
No, I do not.
Do you know whether or not either of them were investigated by your department as being possible suspects in this case?
By our department, I think, it's not me. I believe it was passed on to either MSP or I think the prosecutor's office, I believe, was reached out to the prosecutor's office.
What was, okay, you don't know what was the nature of this reaching out to the prosecutor's office?
Well, I think it was because of due to the capacity that Tim worked and that we wanted to keep neutral on it to let an outside agency look into it if needed.
That outside agency being MSP?
Yeah, and that's what I believe. Detective Sergeant Pathology at the time, he could elaborate on that, I'm sure.
Okay. On February 15, 2010, and right now I'm on point 27.
Which number again, please?
Point 27.
Getting there. Okay.
February 15, 2010 at 9:24 a.m. you entered an additional report, correct?
2015, 9:24 a.m. Correct.
And this is report number .27.
Correct.
And in it you referenced that doesn't say who, but do you know who requested these phone records from Verizon Wireless?
Yes, I think that's the reason for one of your first questions was by the judge signed to obtain phone records and bank records.
I think that one was for bank records.
I think Verizon was listed as well.
And we have one copy of it, so I'm going to mark it as an exhibit. It's the affidavit that I have in my file.
Is this number 2?
This is number 2.
Thank you.
And you now it's been marked as Waszak 2. Does this document refresh your recollection as to whether or not there were 2 separate subpoenas, or perhaps more, for the bank records, for the phone records?
Correct, there would have to be more than one than this one, if there was for phone records.
Were the records at Verizon subpoenaed, or were they just requested?
I'd have to look at the reports. Typically, they don't just provide information, they have to be subpoenaed.
Okay. And you guys,
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
so you requested records from Verizon Wireless at number 313-820-7091, right?
Are you back on 27?
Well, yeah, I'm back on
27.
yeah.
And I'm sorry, where are you at?
Just the second paragraph, talking about the Verizon Wireless records. It was Joann's cell phone,
Correct.
and her records were received on February 12, 2010.
Okay.
You don't know when it is that you requested those records, do you?
Again, I'd have to look at the reports.
Please do. All right, I'll move on.
I gotta go through each.
Okay, so these phone records were received on February 12,
Right
2000.
here, I'm sorry. On 1/21/2010, 3 search warrants were completed, signed by Judge Metropolitan Florida, Fax, Co-America Bank, Chase Bank, and Verizon Wireless.
What are you reading, please?
Point 14.
Point 14. Thank you. Do you know if anybody else signed these affidavits, or were they all you?
Being that I did the report, it would have to be me, I'm assuming.
So this one that we marked as Exhibit 2 is one of the 3,
Correct.
the one for Comerica Bank.
Correct.
Do you know if all 3 of them had the same paragraphs for affiant swears to the following facts? If you know, would it have been the same, or would you have written them all out separately?
That I can't recall. It's dependent on the case, and I don't know.
Okay. So when you received those did you receive the phone records, or did somebody else? Do you know who handled the phone records from your department?
I would, what report are you back on? I'm sorry,
Point 27.
27. Yeah, okay. Yeah, if I did the search warrant, it would have been addressed to me.
Okay, so this report is dated February 15th, but if I'm reading it correctly, you received these phone records on February 12th. Is that true?
That's what it states, yes.
So Did you review these records by yourself, or did you ask for assistance from anybody?
If I were to look through them, it'd probably be myself.
And what specifically were you looking for?
For any phone numbers, anything of,
Are you aware of whether or not a cell phone can be used to locate where a person may have been at any given time?
yes.
How so? If you know.
Well, if the phone's on, you can contact the provider. They can give you a GPS coordinate.
And they can tell you where the phone was at any given time?
If the phone's on, yes.
And do you know if any other phones, do you know if the locations of any phones were requested at all during this investigation?
Yes. From Detective Mitchell. There's a request.
What report number?
It's going to be .7.
Thank you.
And whose cell phone was that? Referencing .7.
Let's see here. Officer Mitchell did not put that in the report, it appears. Actually, in this report, it says Grosse Pointe Farms Police acquired Verizon info from their unit yesterday, which reported the phone was shut off the morning of her disappearance on 1/12/2010 at 08:48 hours.
In the first paragraph it says, I read Joseph the missing's cell phone number, right?
Oops.
Very top paragraph, the last sentence.
I was contacted with Joseph at Verizon Wireless Law Enforcement, correct?
I read Joseph the missing's cell phone number, correct?
Correct.
Who was the missing? Joann Matouk Romain, right?
Correct.
Was any other phone number, did your department ever ask to locate any other cell phones during the course of this investigation, if you know?
Not that I can recall, no.
Do you know if your department ever requested the cell phone records of Tim Matouk for that purpose, to determine his whereabouts at the date and time in question?
That I cannot recall.
How about Bill Matouk?
No,
How about David Romain?
not that I can recall.
Same question for John Matouk.
Not that I can recall.
Do you know how long those records are available from a company like Verizon?
No, I do not.
Let's skip ahead to when this body was found. .30. You know what, actually, let me back up a minute. When you looked through the phone records, did you find anything that piqued your interest?
If it wasn't listed in the report, no.
So there was not a phone number of some security company that was found, or anything else that you can recall that would have...
Wait, what was that question?
Was there a phone number of a security company found in the phone records?
Not that I can recall.
A safety research investigation company wasn't called about a week before Joann's disappearance?
Not that I can recall.
If you would have discovered that, you would have included it in your report, right?
Correct.
Because that's an important fact to consider, right?
Objection form of the question.
Do you believe that that's an important fact to include in your report?
If it was a phone number that Michelle or was different, then yeah, I would look into it.
Well, the question is if Joann would have called the phone number of a safety research investigation company about a week or so before her disappearance, that's something that you would have found interesting enough to include in your report, correct?
Objection to formal question.
Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
And there's nothing in your report about anything like that? right?
I'd have to review the reports.
Please do.
I don't recall.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's skip ahead. In March of 2010, a body is found. Do you know where this body is found?
In Canadian waters,
You know when the body was found?
I'd have to look at the report. What point is it?
Well, I'm in point 30.
On the 21st of March.
This is when what happened?
Contact was made to Detective Sergeant Pathology, for which him and I had gone to Canada.
I'm sorry, sir. Repeat that.
Yes, for which time Detective Sergeant Pathology was notified that a body was found in the Detroit River, Canadian side, for which Detective Sergeant Pathology and I had gone to Canada.
And you guys were contacted, you and Sergeant Pazakowski was contacted by Rosati on March 21, 2010, right?
Correct.
And do you know what date the body was actually found?
I would have to say it was on the 21st.
That would be a pretty reasonable assumption, right? Because that's when,
Being that he was notified at the time that they were out there, yes, it was the 21st.
because if you find the body of a missing person that another department is looking for, you would probably notify that department immediately, correct?
Correct.
So therefore, you're assuming that the body was found on March 21st.
I'm not assuming, I know.
You know.
Yep.
I'm going to hand you what's already been marked as Rosati 1. Let me ask you one more thing before you look at that. Does the Grosse Pointe Woods Public Safety Department shut down on Saturday and Sunday?
No.
Do any detectives work on Saturday or Sunday?
There's an on-call detective.
Okay, so there's an on-call detective on both Saturday and Sunday?
Correct.
Do you know about Grosse Pointe Farms, if they have detectives that are on call or actually working on Saturday and Sunday?
I don't know what their procedure is.
Okay. All right, take a look at what I just handed you. Rosati is looking at 1, please.
Read its entirety or the highlighted?
Read it to yourself. You
Can you identify for the record that Exhibit 1 in Rosati?
It's the, let me see this first. Supplementary report from the Ontario Provincial Police.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, you testified just a moment ago that you are positive that the body was discovered on March 21, 2010, because that's when Rosati contacted Pazakowski. Right? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Are you sure that the body was found on March 21, 2010 still, or do you want to change your answer?
I would have to change my answer because I don't know which document's correct here, the 20th or the 21st.
Is it possible that they're both correct?
At the time, perhaps, yes.
It's possible that the body was found on March 20th, that Rosati and another officer from Grosse Pointe Farms went to Canada and then didn't notify your department until the following day. Right?
Yeah, that would have to be something cleared by a detective sergeant. Pazakowski who spoke with the detective.
Do you find it strange that Grosse Pointe Farms wouldn't tell you guys until the following day that the body that you were looking for was discovered?
Objective form.
Same objection.
I'll take an answer.
Not necessarily.
Well, just a moment ago, you were able to conclude with what seemed to be a strong level of certainty that since Rosati informed Pazakowski on March 21st that's got to be the day that they found the body, right? Didn't you say that?
Yes,
And you seemed pretty certain when you said that, right?
yes.
Because I think what I asked you was, if you would find a body that another department was looking for, you would notify that department immediately, right?
I would think so.
So you don't find it odd that they waited a day? That Grosse Pointe Farms
If that's
waited a day?
correct, and what the conversations were with Detective Sergeant Pathology, who's in charge, I don't know if that's the way it had gone down.
Assume for a moment that Rosati testified that the body was discovered on March 20th, okay?
Yes.
And that he did not call Pathology until the following day. Assume that that's true. Do you find that odd?
No, not necessarily. No.
Assume for a moment that the reason given for not contacting your department is that no detectives work on Saturday.
No.
Would you find that testimony odd?
No.
No? But you do have a detective on call on Saturday, don't you?
On call, correct.
And if a detective would have been told that a body was found, or anybody at the woods would have been told that a body that possibly the one that they had been searching for a number of months was found, that's something that would be noted in our report, isn't it?
Objective form.
If you know,
In their report or on?
in your report. If your department is informed that a body, possibly one that you've been looking for a number of months, has been found, that's something that would be noted in the report, right?
Yeah, we were noting the report, correct.
Nothing in your report about farms reaching out to the woods on March 20th and saying, hey, we may have found the body. Right?
Yeah, nothing was passed on to me.
Do you have any idea why this case was transferred from the farms to the woods one day later?
I don't have an answer for that.
Do you find that odd at all?
No.
Do you know whether or not this should have remained Grosse Pointe Farms case because that's where Joann disappeared from, or was this properly Grosse Pointe Woods case because that's where she resided?
At times for missing, departments work together, and being that her car was there, there's a possibility that all the possibilities are open, that she left on her own, she fell in the water, went in the water, was taken. Just because the car was there, that's why we took the active role as well to assist in the case, to investigate, because she was a resident of our city.
Well, you guys didn't really assist. It became your case the following day, didn't it?
I don't know the exact dates when it was transferred.
Shortly after she was discovered missing, it became the case of the woods, right?
Yes.
And you didn't find that out?
No.
Sitting here today, do you know whether or not Tim Matouk or Bill Matouk were ever investigated by any law enforcement agency to see if they know anything or if they were involved in the disappearance of Joann Matouk Romain?
No, I do not.
Do you find that out?
No, because I don't know if they were or not.
Do you know if your department ever received a report dated June 18, 2010 from Jeffrey M. Jensen, MD, forensic pathologist at the University of Michigan?
I don't recall. I have to look at the report. Do you have a report?
I don't have the report. We have the autopsy report. Can you just get this marked? And you what's been marked as Waszak 3. Take a moment to look at that, please. Have you seen this report before?
I don't recall.
You see where there's contusions that are, according to this report, there were contusions located on the left upper arm.
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
Are you aware of the fact that her purse, Joann's purse, was found in her vehicle torn?
Yes, I believe. Yes, I believe so.
Do these facts in any way lead you to believe that this was perhaps an abduction and murder or a suicide? Do these facts assist you in any way?
They don't assist in the investigation in regards to hemorrhaging on the bone.
Sitting here today, do you know whether or not Joann Matouk Romain walked into the water, or if she was abducted, or something else happened?
No, I do not know whether she walked in.
Would you agree with a conclusion? If somebody were to sit up here and make a conclusion that they believe, based on all the evidence, that she walked into the water and killed herself, would you agree with that conclusion?
With what we have here right now, she was found in the water. And with no other investigative leads at this point, I have to conclude that she drowned in the water, as the report states.
I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you if she drowned in the water. I asked you if you agree with the conclusion that on January 12, 2010, she walked into the water and died in the water at that time. Do you agree with that conclusion?
No, because I don't know if she walked in or fell in.
Okay. Other than that, you agree that she entered the water on January 12, 2010 and never came out?
From what's presented in front of me, and nothing else at this point, yes.
Okay. Even though there's testimony that her car was gone and then returned?
Objection, it's not testimony.
I'm sorry, even though there's statements from witnesses that her car was gone from the parking lot and then returned later?
Again, objection, because I don't think that's what the statements say. The statements say they didn't see a car fitting the description of Joann's car.
That's not what they said. They said the parking lot was empty. Even though
wait, excuse me. I thought the witness said there was a van that was dark in the parking lot. So how can you say they didn't say that it was empty?
I'm going to get to that.
Well, your question doesn't make sense. Which is it?
At what point in the evening there's a statement that the parking lot's empty, right?
Yes, by one of the witnesses.
And then there's another witness that says at another point in the evening there's a dark colored van there, right?
Correct.
And then yet another point in the evening, Joann's car is back in the parking lot, right?
Well,
According to one statement, at least.
I object to the form of the question is back. It was there. We don't know if it's back or not.
Fair enough. According to, okay. Right? According to at least one statement,
Yeah.
the car was there
Yes.
later in the evening?
Yeah, her car was there, correct.
After, at least according to one witness, it was gone?
No, not gone.
Not
One
gone.
witness said they didn't see the vehicle, another witness said they did. Another witness said they saw numerous vehicles in the back at different times, right?
Right. But the car, as far as being parked where it was, It's gone, according to one witness, right?
Correct.
According to another witness, at another point in time, there's a black van there, not fitting the description of Joann's car, right?
Correct.
And then later on in the evening, Joann's car is in the parking lot, right?
According to the witness, yes.
And there's contusions on her arm, according to at least one pathologist, right? Is that a yes?
Yes.
And her purse is torn, right?
In regards to torn, I don't know where that information came from and which report it's in.
Assume for a moment that it's torn.
Okay.
Does that change your mind in taking into all the things that I just mentioned to you? You still don't think that this was, you still, taking into account all the things that we just talked about, you still believe the most likely thing that happened to her is that she entered the water voluntarily, either by slipping or by walking in, and died?
Object to the form of the question. He said all options are open, and he said she may have slipped and fallen in as an option. That's not voluntarily entering the water. So you're misstating what he's told you.
Let me rephrase the question. In light of everything that we just talked about, do you want to change your answer as to what you believe happened?
Well, he never gave you an answer what he believed
You
happened.
just said
He
what his answer was.
No,
Don't
he
talk
said
over-
all
stop.
options
You
are
gotta
open.
stop. One guy at a time, please, all right? Let's have a clean record.
Okay, how about I ask the question, you make an objection, then he answers it. Fair enough?
It depends on what the question is.
Great, okay. Taking into account all the things that we just talked about, do you still believe that this was not an abduction?
Well, I'm going to object to the question because he never said he didn't believe it was not an abduction. He said all options were open in his mind.
Didn't you say that you believe that she either entered the water voluntarily or slipped? Did you say
Yeah,
that?
I did say that, yes.
Okay, so that's not an abduction, is it?
No.
Do you believe she was abducted?
Again, all opportunity, just because we have a body in the water, I don't know how she entered that. I just can't say just because we found a body, everything's off the table.
So you don't know if she was abducted or not?
No, all options are open.
And the facts that we just talked about, that we just went through, just a couple moments ago, do those help you come to a conclusion as to whether or
No.
not? No?
No.
Not at all?
Not a conclusion, no.
You know, assume for a moment that there are witnesses who claim that at some point in the evening of January 12, 2010, they saw men down by the water area where Joann is presumed to have entered the water. Would that change your mind at all?
No.
Have any effect on what you think?
All options are open.
Do you know whether or not there was a baby car seat that was found in Joann's car?
No, I do not.
Go off the record, please, for a minute.
The time is 11:55 for now, for the record. The time is 11:55, 51, I'm back on the record.
I have no further questions.
No questions. But better yet, let me just say I'll pass the witness for now. He's going to show you the picture.
Lieutenant, your attorney has put in front of you the caption of the lawsuit that brings us here today. I'm going to ask you a few questions about that, but again, for the record, I'm going to remind you as to who I am. I'm George DeGroot, and I represent all of the Grosse Pointe Farms defendants as well as the city of Grosse Pointe Farms. First and foremost, did you at any time find any evidence that substantiated Joann Matouk Romain was murdered?
No.
Did you at any time find any evidence that any of the defendants named on that pleading in this lawsuit, including yourself, participated in the murder of Joann Matouk Romain?
No.
Did you at any time in your investigation of this matter find any evidence that substantiated that you conspired with any of the named defendants to conceal or hide a murder of Joann Matouk Romain?
No.
Did you find any evidence in your investigation that any of the defendants, excluding you, conspired to cover up a murder of Joann Matouk Romain?
No.
At any time in your investigation, did you find any evidence that led you to believe any of the defendants were in any way involved with the disappearance of Joann Matouk Romain?
No.
Did you at any point in time during your investigation find any evidence that any of the defendants in this matter conspired to conceal some or all aspects of Joann Matouk Romain's disappearance?
No.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Lieutenant Mark Pizer, representing Tim Matouk. Those questions that were just asked by Mr. DeGroot when he said any defendants, you understood that included my client, Mr. Tim Matouk, correct?
Yes.
And your answers are still the same as to Tim Matouk as to Mr. DeGroot's questions, correct?
Yes.
All right. One last question. One of the counts in this claim is that, it's count 3, that the defendants acted an affirmative action to create a risk that Ms. Romain would be exposed to an act of violence by a third party. The question I have is, you have not uncovered or been presented with any evidence that supports that allegation, have you?
No, I've not.
Let me pass the witness back to Mr. DeGroot. He has one more question. Go ahead.
Thank you. Lieutenant, could you find your report 37.10? Let me know when you have it.
Yes, I do.
I want to direct your attention to the last paragraph on the first page that recounts your telephone contact with Ms. Nowak. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
As I read your report, as you've written your report, she saw a person wearing clothing that appeared to be all dark in color. True enough?
Yes.
Am I correct in reviewing your report that at no time did Ms. Nowak ever identify to you whether the person she saw in all black was male or female?
That's correct.
She just merely said she saw a person, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Did you ask her if it was a man or a woman?
Oh, I'm not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were
here, counsel. I just passed it back to Mr. DeGroot to complete his examination.
Fair enough.
Still my turn.
All right, I thought that we went around. Sorry about that.
Apology accepted. Lieutenant, if the evidence in this case is that Mr. Timothy Matouk, at the time and the date of the incident in question, was acting as a detective for the Hartford Woods Police Department, but assigned to a multi-jurisdictional task force, working with Michigan State Police and Macomb County Deputy Sheriffs, tracking down wanted felons and other criminals in the city of Warren. In fact, other officers who were with him at that time testified that would be pretty significant evidence as an investigating officer, in your opinion, would it not?
Yes.
And that would show that he was not able to be at the scene during the time frames that are at issue in this case, correct?
Correct.
And that evidence would lead you as a thorough, competent investigator, rule him out as a suspect, would it not?
Correct.
Thank you. Nothing else.
But you never got any of that, did you?
Any of what? Objection?
You never got anything that Mr. Pizer just asked you about, did you? Any of that, any evidence of anything that Mr. Pizer just asked you about,
That
right?
information?
Right.
No.
Okay. And did you ever ask Ms. Nowak if the person that you saw was a man or a woman?
That I don't recall.
Isn't that something that would be important? Was this person a man or a woman? Isn't that something that you should have asked her?
I'm not saying I didn't ask her, I don't recall.
If you did ask her, wouldn't you include that in your report?
And if she provided an answer, yes, I would.
Okay. If she would have said, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, wouldn't you have included that in your report? Unsure if it's a man or a woman?
Not always, no.
Really? Somebody says, I saw somebody right there at the time that the bank was being robbed, but I don't know if it's a man or a woman. You wouldn't include that in your report? Unsure if it's a man or a woman?
Not saying that, but we're talking about a different case now, not a bank robbery. Someone walking along the lake It's a different situation.
Somebody walking along the lake where a woman was presumed to have entered the lake and died. It's not important to know whether or not the person seen there was a man or a woman?
Yeah, and as I answered, I don't recall asking that.
All right, thank you. I have nothing further.
Let's see, I do have a question or two. Did you know who Joann Matouk Romain was before January 12, 2010?
No,
Did you had any contact with her whatsoever that you're aware of?
no,
What about Michelle Romain?
no,
Did you in any way find any evidence of foul play in your investigation regarding the disappearance?
no,
If someone were to go to a bank and seek to withdraw a large amount of money related to the disappearance, would that be suspicious activity?
yes, I would look into it.
In fact, in this case, did you find evidence that someone had done that or attempted to do it?
Yes,
Did you investigate that?
I looked into it, yes.
Did you make a report along with Mr. Pazahowski regarding that?
I have to look at the report quickly, so yes.
Take a look at 28.28.
Which report? Okay, I have it.
You have it?
Yes,
So based on this report, which was authored by you, right?
correct.
You got a contact from Corporate Security, Bank of America, Mr. Nicholas Finn, regarding a suspicious incident?
Correct.
What was the nature of the suspicious incident that you were advised by Mr. Finn?
That there was a bank transfer of $200,000 from, her name, Rose Matouk. Let's see.
And that was a transfer that was attempted to be made from her John Hancock fund to her checking account, is that right?
Correct, to her checking account, that's correct.
Okay. And there, according to Mr. Finn, were other family members reportedly with this woman, Rose Matouk, at the time of this attempted transfer, is that right?
That's what it states, yes.
You recall that conversation?
Yes.
And did you specifically do anything to follow up the information that Mr. Finn gave you?
Yeah, I spoke to Rose Matouk
Where is that notated for my
at
identification?
the bottom here on 216, Pazahowski, same page.
Page?
Made contact with Rose Matouk.
All right, that was Detective Pazahowski did that, but and you as well?
And Wright, yeah, Pazahowski and Ryder made contact with Rose Matouk.
And did she advise you that she was pressured by Michelle Romain, among others, to provide them with money in the amount of $200,000 to, quote, get Joann Romain back?
Correct.
You were asked a lot of questions by plaintiff counsel about whether or not any fact or alleged fact was odd. Remember those questions?
Correct.
How about this? Is this odd?
Correct, yeah.
And would it be a reasonable inference to say that if a person was seeking to get $200,000 to, quote, get Joann Romain back, they might have some knowledge about where Joann was, correct?
Well, that's why we spoke to Rose.
Certainly a reasonable inference, isn't it?
Yes.
Did Michelle ever tell you that she knew where Joann was?
No.
And I can imagine that if you're a detective investigating this disappearance and someone who was closely involved in the investigation, a relative, had some knowledge about where she was, that's something you'd want to know, isn't it?
Correct.
And it's something that, assuming she wanted her mother found, you'd think she would tell you, wouldn't she?
Correct.
And you never got that information from her, did you?
Not initially from her, no.
That's all I have.
Did you ask her whether or not she knew where her mother was?
through normal conversations, was on a daily basis. She did not know where her mom was, no.
Did you ever ask Michelle where she believed her mother was?
She, in those specific words, no, I don't know if I did, but her thought process was that she was abducted from one of these 4 individuals.
So when your attorney was just asking you leading questions about what you believed and didn't believe, in reality, Michelle did tell you what she thought happened to her mother, didn't she?
She thought, yes, but not in regards to the money that he's asking.
Okay, well, that's not what... He asked you questions about the money, but then he also asked you other questions, didn't he?
But those all related to the money.
Didn't your attorney ask you if Michelle knew where her mother was, you would expect her to tell you something along those lines?
Correct, for $200,000, yes.
All right, okay, so...
Mr. Redden,
Do you know what that money was supposed to be for? Any idea? Other than to, quote, get Joann Romain back?
To pay debts off.
And that's how they were going to get Joann Romain back, by paying debts off?
Individual connections with perhaps he know someone that could, as I'm reading on the report here, something, or have Joann Romain returned.
So the money was to pay a debt owed by Joann Matouk. Is that what you wrote in your report?
Yes.
So how is that getting Joann Romain back? Any idea?
To pay debts back? Well, I can't go in her mind, but if she's thinking that John Matouk, it's because of that, if he's paid back, if who he owes is paid back, perhaps Joann can be returned.
Returned, meaning by somebody who had her.
Again, I can't get in her mind. I don't know what she was thinking at the time.
I'm asking what was in your mind.
My mind was, when I'm called by corporate, that $200,000 was being transferred. And in that conversation, according to the bank teller, it was to get Joann back, that I have to investigate it, because I thought perhaps information was out there that we were unaware of.
Looking at page 2 of point 28, you wrote, the thought was, according to Michelle, is that since, and then there's a blank, is an individual with connections, that perhaps he could know someone that knows something or have Joann Romain returned. Michelle was questioned if, and then there's another blank, ever stated to her, it says every, but I imagine you meant to write ever, stated to her or anyone that he is involved in Joann's disappearance, requesting money to be paid back from Joann Matouk's debts. So that's what Michelle's thought was, right?
Correct. And she stated no.
Who is this person that's blacked out here, that's whited out? Any idea?
Anthony Pipa, I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
Spell it, please.
P-I-P-I-A.
P-I-P-I-A?
Correct.
So this money, essentially, was ransom money, wasn't it? That's what the purpose of the money was for, right?
Well, she was hoping to pay this individual off, it appears.
Isn't that what you would call a ransom?
If that's the definition of it, yes.
Well, if you pay somebody to have somebody returned,
Yeah.
what would you
Yes.
call that? Ransom?
Sure.
Okay.
I got 2 minutes left on this.
I've nothing further.
Nothing else?
Set. No questions, thank you.
The time is 12:11:35. That will conclude the deposition.
All right, I will email you.